Tide goes in, tide goes out. Never a miscommunication. You can't explain that.
So far, we've been making code that just runs, does some stuff, then prints out the result. And while most code runs automatically, usually there's some user input to kick off these automated workflows. And I have been negligent in not teaching this topic, so I'm fixing it now. Today, we learn how to read and write, just like when we were toddlers. We have done a ton of stuff surrounding printing stuff out, but what about requesting input? You know, actually caring about the user, as annoying as that sounds. Who cares about what users want, right? Well, luckily, programming languages support this. Java has an object called scanner that you can import that will pretty much pause the program, request input from a user, and then return it to store in a variable. It does this by using methods like we learned about in the intro series. So let's make a new project, input-output, a new class, interactive class, and then add your main method here. Pause here until you're caught up. Now, for our code, the first thing we want to do is import java.util.scanner up at the top outside of the class. This is where our imports go. Then, inside of our main method, we're going to create a new object of scanner. So scanner input equals new scanner system.in. And with this object, we have a method for each of the different primitive types, int, float, double, etc., called next, and then the primitive type's name. And the value you need to type in when you use these needs to be the valid type, or your computer will gain sentience and try to murder you HAL 9000 style. It's why programmers always have coffee next to them, to short-circuit the computer by frying the electrical components. This isn't true for character, however. Strings and characters are handled by a method called next, which can actually take any value and by default splits based on spaces, same as the primitive split. But you can actually change this and use anything you want as a delimiter or indicator that you're going to separate here. But that relies on a thing called regexes, which I don't even want to try to attempt to explain in this video. You can also pass in any value as a single thing, like a whole sentence, using something called next line. So if you want a single generic input, use next line. If you want to enforce an input type or grab by specific chunks, then you can use one of the others. So now we're going to write string response equals input.nextLine, which will allow the user to input a value. But we need to make sure that the user knows to do that, so above that put system.out.println, hi, what's your name? From here, we can use this variable to respond with the user's answer. So system.out.println, hello, plus the response variable. Then, when we run it, it says, hi, what's your name? And then waits for you. So don't leave your computer hanging, give it a verbal high five and say something back. And of course, we are going to say, Zalando! And now it says, hello. Zalando! Congrats, you have now developed an AI chatbot. Okay, not really, but let me know if you want me to tell you how to actually make a chatbot, because I paid the big bucks to know how to do that and then teach you for free. But back on topic, this is super useful since now we can input anything, and each prompt can take as many inputs as you want. So you can even do something like a calculator where you type in 3 separate responses in order and get an answer back. So if we did something like add 1, 2, we would get back 3. So let's code that up real quick. So type system.out.println, type add num1, num2. Then on the next line, string calc type equals input.next, int num1 equals input.nextInt, int num2 equals input.nextInt, and then if calc type dot equals add, then system.out.println num1 plus num2. Run it, and it'll say 3. From here, we can do a lot of things, like make it continue forever until you tell it to exit. And if you've watched all my videos so far, it should be obvious how we do this. Loops. And if you didn't remember that, well, now you have some homework. For this, the while conditional says, yo, they say to exit yet? So let's do string repeat equals empty quotes, and then while not repeat dot equals exit, then system.out.println, what does Simon say? Repeat equals input.next line. System.out.println, Simon says repeat. And then if we run this, we can keep typing anything we want. Computer will reiterate it. And then when we eventually say exit, Simon says exit, and then the program stops. Now, what if we have a text file we want to read from? Well, that's an option too. Java has a class called FileWriter that, as the name implies, writes to a file. So we import java.io FileWriter, where io means input-output. Then in our code, we need to do something called a try-catch block. This is how we protect our computer/program from crashing when something bad happens, like trying to assign a word to an int. This is mandatory for file writing because there is a huge chance an exception might get thrown by a corrupted file or something. They are kinda like an if-else block, so for now, let's try, open close squiggly brackets, followed by catch, exception E, open close squiggly brackets, where exception means your code blue screened of death. So the first line we will do is create our file using FileWriter. FileWriter writer equals new FileWriter, our first text file .txt, which creates a .txt text file. Writer.write, hello dio, which will write our first line to the text file, and then writer.close, which saves it. For now, we're going to put a simple system.out.println what in our catch block, just in case something weird does happen. And now to read from it, we need to retrieve our file back. So we will write import java.io.file, and now we'll need another try-catch block as well, since this is another file object. So in our new try-catch, let's write file equals new file, our first text file.txt, which tells the computer there should be a file named this in the current directory. Now, make our file reader, which is just a scanner with the file in the constructor. Scanner reader equals new scanner file. Do string line equals reader.nextLine, then system.out.println line, and it'll print out hello dio. And if the file had 1,000 lines, you could use a while loop, which would have a conditional check reader.hasNextLine, which checks to see if the file has another line, and then that loop would automatically stop once we've reached the end of the file. Now you are a pro at user input, program printing, file reading, and file writing. These are going to come in super handy in later projects as a way to test our code. And until my next video,
He's looking at you, kid.
like, subscribe, and comment below what you want to see next or topics you'd like to know more about.